Top of the morning and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Olawunmi. The headlines. Russia blames U.S. for Nord Stream destruction, citing emerging evidence. Russia hits Ukrainian port and grain facilities in airstrikes. Plus, Russian Black Sea commander shown working after Ukraine claimed it had killed him. Thank you for joining us. Russia has put the blame for the Nord Stream gas pipeline explosion on the United States, and it says there's evidence to back the claim. This happened during a special meeting of the United Nations Security Council to mark the one-year anniversary of the attack. In response, U.S. political coordinator John Kelly accused Russia of selectively promoting its own narratives. 1 year on from explosions that damaged the Nord Stream gas pipelines under the Baltic Sea between Russia and Germany, the question of who was behind them is unresolved. September the 26th, 2022, Swedish seismologists registered several blasts some 17 hours apart off the Danish island of Bornholm that ruptured 3 out of 4 lines of the Nord Stream system, sending plumes of methane into the atmosphere. According to Russian gas company Gazprom, about 800 million cubic meters of gas had escaped. It took several days for the gas to stop leaking. Now joining us is Dr. Kunle Olawunmi, a retired Navy Commodore, also now the head of Department of International Relations, Diplomatic Studies at Christian University in Abeokuta. You're welcome to the program this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning.
The alleged death of the Admiral Sokolov, as claimed by Ukraine, appears to have them with pie in their face now, with this video released of the man purportedly said to be alive. Now, this was obviously an incident that seemed to buttress arguments that Ukraine has far-reaching power to strike beyond enemy lines, beyond the front lines, and hit crucial Russian targets, and taking out a high-level military officer. But that appears now to not be the case. Were the Ukrainians too hasty with their intelligence to claim that he died?
Thank you very much for that question. It's maritime in nature. We have to be careful at this phase of war because this is the propaganda stage of war. When the combatants are getting weary, getting tired, you get all sorts of news and claims by both sides. Usually, psychological oppression is at the best at this point, you know, the issue of morals and morale. So, there's no doubt that the Ukrainians maybe seem to be listening to me when I reacted to your question last time, that I wonder why they've not been hitting the Russians where it pains them. And why they've not been actually attacking strategic installations, you know, in Russia, particularly in Crimea. And I think the NATO forces also must have been advising them to give them some food for thought, because if you look at what is happening in the United States now, there's a lot of hue and cry about the spendings of the United States. The civil society in the United States are getting worried about spendings. Also, the Ukrainians and the NATO should also give the Russian population a cause for concern. And what they can do is what they have started doing now, instead of actually bogging themselves down around the Donbass. But they should hit more strategic installations in Russian territory and give them a cause for concern, so that the population in Russia should start feeling what the Ukrainian populations are also feeling in Kiev. So I think they are doing well. But we have to be careful of propaganda from your question. I'm very sure that the target was the leader of that group. But I think the intelligence failed because they're supposed to at least have a spotter around that place before they launch the missiles, to be sure. They're supposed to be very sure that the commander was in the building before they launch the attack. I also know that maybe they got some help from NATO surveillance aircraft, that actually directed the missiles accurately. But unfortunately, they were not sure the commander was there when that happened. That could have been a very huge blow to Russia if the commander was killed.
What you're suggesting, as in the Ukrainians hitting more strategic Russian targets beyond enemy lines, is a military solution to this conflict, as opposed to a diplomatic solution to this conflict. If that happens and both sides continue to escalate by hitting such strategic targets, and obviously it will just escalate the war, aren't you concerned that that brings a more dangerous dimension to this conflict and it's poking the bear, as opposed to taking the ground, the territory that the Russians are occupying and pushing them back, but you want to hit them in their own land? Doesn't that make the war a more grievous situation for both sides?
No, not at all. Not at all. Of course, if you look at the game theory, that usually, I believe the Russians must have considered the usual game theory before they actually started this issue. Everything is about two things, two variables: the actions, and motives. What is the motive of Russia when they invaded Ukraine? Then you look at the action, you look at the costs. If you look at, you see that the actions of Russia has not been consistent with the goal. What I mean by that is that if your motive is to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, your action subsequently that is not very consistent with that goal. Issue of genocides, issue of war crime against humanity. I mean, these are beyond the scope of the goal, because if you know you want to invade, then you should do it precisely, and do it on time. But now you have protracted this. I think the Ukrainians also have right to do same. And at the end, if you look at objectively, the cost of this war in terms of personnel, in terms of weapons, in terms of people, the political aspect, the economic aspect. In game theory, you will see that this war is going to end or continue depending on the value of the cost. What is the value to Russia if Ukraine today join NATO? What is the cost of that value? Then what is the action? What is the motive? Then if you look at NATO also, they were saying that if Russia wins this war, it's going to be disastrous to Ukraine. And it's going to be dangerous for NATO. So these are the value and the costs of the war. If the value is so important to Russia, then they're going to keep on doing what they're doing. Because if they allow this, if they pull out of this, it means that NATO missiles are going to be lined up around the border of Russia, okay? And they don't want that. Now, if Russia wins, there may be domino effect whereby, they keep on going to Belarus, go to Kazakhstan. They can keep on expanding up to Poland, Georgia, Tbilisi and so on. So if you look at the value of the cost, you see that it's just natural that this war is not going to end very soon. It's not just easy for Russia to say, okay, it's enough. It's okay, we are going out. And then in the next 6 months, all NATO forces will be at the border around the Donbass region, pointing their missiles at Moscow. So it's going to be difficult, it's going to be protracted. It's going to be something that they have to have a sort of agreement. Maybe just like you have the Berlin, the East and West Berlin, immediately after the Second World War. And if you look at this war, basically you see that it's basically a conflict, between strategic partners. And I'm not very, very optimistic that it's going to end very soon. I'm not very optimistic.
The alleged Nazification of Ukraine by the Zelensky government is one of the reasons propounded by Russian President Vladimir Putin for their invasion of Ukraine. As that has happened and occurred, now that the Speaker of the House of Commons of Canada honored a former SS man who was a Nazi in their House of Commons, giving him 2 standing ovations, for which reason that Speaker, Anthony Rutter, has now resigned. The SS and the Gestapo and the different units in Nazi Germany were notorious for infernal crimes, and it was very surprising that a man of the Speaker's stature didn't do the research or didn't know that this 98-year-old former Nazi person was actually a Nazi person. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in war, a lot of things happen, and I believe that whatever you see are just at the tactical arena. War is actually in 3 phases. You have the political, the strategic, and the tactical. You can also break it down into 4, maybe, if you want to look at the operations. So there are different tactics, intelligence operations that happen. And I think it's just part of the things. If we look at during the Second World War, the Russians, the Soviet Union then, I think they had the dealings of what I consider to be a war of attrition. Like a game theory war of attrition with Napoleon. During these skirmishes, a lot of things happened. And if you look at the Second World War, the Soviet Union also, they did the same. That's conducting a war of attrition against Hitler. And even though, it made the war to be protracted, but at the end of the day, the Russians, they won that war somehow with the Allies, What you're saying is about the issue of intelligence, spy mission, accusation, counter-accusation. As I said earlier, this period of propaganda where ambiguity continued to increase or decrease, and people tend to react to what they see on the media. The actual thing that goes on behind is often different from what we see. So if they say somebody is a Nazist, yeah, anybody can claim that. And what is the importance today of the issue of Nazism? Something that was promoted during the Second World War by Hitler, and the Germans themselves are very, very shy when it comes to trying to tag them as Nazis. So I think the Russians are just using this as propaganda, and sometimes people fall victim of it, and it's not very, very relevant as to what is going on the ground. So I think we should look at how this war can actually be terminated, because right now we've gone through all the phases. The propaganda phase is still going on. But I think we should start going towards the termination phase, where we should start thinking about arbitration and how to reduce the carnage that we are seeing on a daily basis. Morals are very low on the Western side. Morale are very low. It's very low on even the Ukrainian side. People are getting tired of it. Even the United States are having problems to defend how they are financing Ukraine. And I think we should start thinking seriously about international arbitration that can bring this to an end.
But Navy Commodore, there's no ambiguity here. If this was not as serious as an issue as it is, the Speaker of Canada's House of Commons will not resign. Doesn't this give Russia an opportunity to play I told you so with this situation concerning the resignation of Anthony Rota because of honoring a former Nazi soldier? You said it's a long time ago, but it's deeply offensive to all the countries where all the millions of people that died as a result of the evil of the Nazi regime. And also concerning Hungary, who are now saying that they may not support Ukraine even as much as they have, or they're going to be more on the sidelines now because they're claiming that Ukraine isn't treating ethnic Hungarians in Ukraine properly. So Viktor Orban has said that. And it also comes on the heels of the issue concerning Poland and Ukraine, and Ukraine taking Poland to WTO, to which Russia quickly jumped on the bandwagon of criticism to say that there's no way this conflict will continue without Europe having conflicts within herself, outside their conflict with Russia. So is it important for these countries to take incidents into consideration as this conflict continues?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about some of those things you've mentioned. I'm very concerned because, you know, for Poland to say that they are no longer going to support Ukraine, for me, I think it's foolhardy. Because Ukraine took them to court for issue of grain deals. What do they expect Ukraine to do if you cannot use the Black Sea to transport your grain? And now you are dumping your grain in Poland, and if the farmers in Poland are getting really, you know, annoyed that, you know, prices of grains are dropping, and these are not things that should cause animosity between Poland and Ukraine. Maybe there are other undercurrents, I don't know. In the case of Hungary, Hungary has never, from beginning, really support what was going on in Ukraine. They have basically been pro-Russian. If you look at the issue of gas, you know, boycott, the economic sanctions, Ukraine has, Hungary has always, you know, behaved as if they are supporting Russia in the first instance. So the action of Hungary, they have not really been there for them. But I'm worried about Poland and the skirmishes that is going on between Ukraine and Poland right now. Poland is a frontline state, and if they look at it, Ukraine is like a buffer. But now let's go to issue of Nazis and issue of somebody resigning. If that happens, what we just narrated, if it happens in Nigeria, I think they are going to throw a party. Nobody is going to resign. People resign for various reasons, you know, and I don't even see the logic, you know. After the Second World War and what happened, look at what is happening in 2023, where the Germans themselves are fully behind what is going on in Ukraine. They are supporting Ukraine full time against Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. Now, some in Canada is resigned because he entertained a Nazi. Can you look at the contradiction? So I think there may be other reasons. And also let us understand that this is where the intelligence agencies in all fronts are extremely busy. The CIA, the KGB, the MI6, this is when they are very busy. So outside the front line, the operational zone, there are so many things that are going on under. And this can be sort of blackmailed by the KGB or GRU to actually make the allies, NATO allies, to improve within themselves. We can see that there's some skirmishes between the allies. So it is in the interest of Putin to put asunder whatever NATO has, you know, tried to put together. So these are very active intelligence activities that are going on behind. And I think the CIA and the allies, intelligence agencies are doing the same in Russia. So they are just some of those things that you expect in this kind of war game.
Well, I must say that one of the reasons that it's so deeply offensive to all the countries, even especially supporters of Ukraine, is that Nazi Germany, that is Hitler, and that regime were responsible for the death of 6 million Jews. 6 million people murdered, raped, destroyed, pillaged, and aside from all the other millions of people and soldiers that died because of the Nazi regime. So that's why it's very offensive. But let's turn our attention now to the war situation in Ukraine as it stands. Are you confident that Ukraine will be able to keep up this counteroffensive up till next year?
Yes, they will be able to continue to do what they're doing for as long as possible. If you look at the balance of terror, balance of war between the two sides, if you isolate Russia, you see that they can produce more weapons to sustain this war faster than even the United States. However, when you have the NATO and their allies supporting this war, it's going to be bogged down to resources, funding, and the will to continue to ensure that Russia is weakened at the end of the day. So as long as the NATO allies are not fighting as they are beginning to do, they will continue to support this effort. And Ukrainians will continue to fight almost indefinitely, because the point in game theory is that when you weigh your action and the cost, the value, sometimes one of the combatants may have to pull out and the other will win. I think NATO is prepared to continue to sustain this effort because of what the secretary said during the UN meeting, that it's going to be very disastrous for Ukraine to lose this war, and it's going to be very dangerous for the allies if Russia wins in Ukraine. So where they're going to meet up is difficult to fathom at this point. But I think we should start looking at the Black Sea and the Crimea region to see whether some sort of agreement, compromise can be made there. But to your question, yeah, Ukraine will be able to continue to fight this war till next year, as long as the NATO allies, their cohesion does not break. And I know that's what the Russian intelligence are doing, to also allow or to make NATO to implode. If they implode, then it's all over. If you blackmail them for entertaining Nazis and maybe somebody is taking somebody's support, and Poland is angry that if they keep on giving them weapons, they have to defend themselves. How can you defend yourself against Russia if they can break through Ukraine? So it's common sense for Poland to continue to support whatever is happening in Ukraine so that they don't defeat Ukraine. Once they defeat Ukraine, then the boundary is going to, to extend to Poland. So Poland should continue to support. Hungary, I really don't like their approach to this war. It's either you are here or you are not there. If you are with NATO, then stay with NATO. So I think as long as the cohesion within NATO holds, yeah, Ukraine can continue this war forever.
And we hope that there is a resolution to this conflict. Dr. Kunle Olawunmi, retired Navy Commodore, HOD International Relations, Diplomatic Studies at Christian University, who joined us. Thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate your contribution.
Thank you for having me.